Hi, friends. I'm Rebecca Tolin, and I am here today with another remarkable recovery story. Today, I'm speaking with Jenny Jarman. She was working full time as an occupational therapist. She was a new mom, and then she fell very ill with ME/CFS, or chronic fatigue syndrome. She also had a lot of POTS symptoms and was diagnosed as having long COVID. She went in circles for several years and was really sick until she discovered this mind-body approach, and Jenny reached out to me for coaching. And I'm so happy to say she is here to share her amazing recovery story. Jenny, it's so great to see you.
Great to see you too, Rebecca. I'm really looking forward to sharing my story.
I know this has been a long time coming, and I'm so happy that we can talk about this today. And because sometimes these stories start really heavy because we've all been through so much hardship. So I want to fast forward and sort of start with the happy ending, and then we'll go backwards. So, how are you feeling these days?
Great. Yeah, really good. I couldn't quite imagine it when I was poorly because I thought, oh, I might get better to a certain sort of quality of life. I didn't ever sort of imagine I would get back to a completely normal life, which I have. I'm not living life with any restrictions at all. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm a mum to my boys again, which they missed out on for a long time. I'm going back to work. I'm enjoying life as well. I've taken some time just to enjoy life, catch up with friends, go out. I'm going to Paris at the weekend, things like that, So I've just been having a nice time, and I'm starting a new job in just less than 2 weeks.
Oh my goodness, Jenny, that is so exciting. It's just amazing. And I love that you took some time out to enjoy life instead of kind of diving right in. And we'll kind of talk about the importance of joy a little bit later in the interview. So I'm hearing you say you're going back to work. I know you're chasing around your two young boys all day. You're traveling again. Give us a sense of how you were at your worst and the contrast between those two states.
So at my worst, it was horrendous. It was very, very severe. There were times when I was just in bed, and everything became such a threat to me. Noise, light, so there was a time when I was just really lay there, just looking at the wall or out the window, meditating. I would listen to things in short bursts, which thankfully, helped me get better because I started listening to recovery videos that led me to find you. But my life was so restricted. Having a shower was a major event, and my husband would have to stand in the bathroom because I wouldn't feel stable just standing in the bathroom having a shower. I always think of it as well in terms of, there was a point of trying to get to the bottom of my street, and then there was also a letterbox, and they were just impossible. Those markers were just, and then my oldest son started school. It's a 10-minute walk up the hill, and it really felt like Mount Everest. It was just, I wasn't even getting dressed, it was impossible. I had to have friends walk him to school. Luckily we've got great family nearby. We had grandparents did a lot, and my husband just had to do so much whilst working full time. It got to the point, when my boys missed me so much, they would just come into bed to be with me. And, it was awful, really, but that was the only way we could really spend time together.
It had to be heartbreaking as a new mom, and also just terrifying because at that point you didn't know that there was a way to recover.
It was heartbreaking because I'd always really, really wanted to be a mom. And I think, that was probably to do with it as well. I put so much pressure and hope on that, and not to be being able to fulfill that was just awful, because that was everything I wanted. And I knew my boys were missing out on a lot. It was so hard. It was like watching my life go on around me without taking part of it. And at times it was really hopeless because I was given hopeless, outcomes. There was a doctor that I spoke to once that I was speaking to him because I was low in mood, and I told him this, and he said, why are you low in mood? And I said, because of the lack of progression in my condition. And he said, well, that's something that you're going to have to get used to, because this is something you're going to live with for the rest of your life.
Oh, Jenny, I just feel like I wish doctors didn't say that they instead just said, I don't have the answer for you, right? Because that we know there's the nocebo, which is the opposite of the placebo, where literally people get worse when they expect to get worse and they're told by someone credible.
And that just makes so much sense as well, because I actually saw a really great doctor in A&E quite early on, but he said, this is going to be the long haul. You're going to be like this for a year or two. So that sets up my expectations. I'm not going to be better for at least a year or two.
It's just incredible, the power of our mind. And of course, that's not to say that these symptoms aren't real physical symptoms. They are, but our brain and nervous system are really running the show. So you've talked a little bit about this, but what did you try that didn't work? What was this period of time like? I think it was about 2 years where you were often in bed and seeking different remedies.
So the first year, I think I went down all the wrong avenues for me. I was treating it very much like a solely physical, illness with a physical purpose. And I got into very strict pacing. I was following this very, very strict pacing route, and that actually disabled me further, because everything then became, something that I could fail at, because I could never stick to pacing. One, because I'm not the most organised person with things like that, and then also I had 2 very young children, so there were always things that were going to crop up and make me feel like, oh no, I've gone over that. I've been up in a night with one of my children, they were poorly, and then I'd think, oh gosh, I'm going to have a big flare up. That's not, this is going to be awful. And then I would, because that's what I was telling my brain. So for me, that was a difficult route to go down. So that really didn't work. And that, in fact, before I did that, I'd been very like up and down. Been able to get back up, and then I would crash down. I'd be more acutely unwell. But what the strict pacing did was it just made my functioning go down and down and down like that, because everything became, I'd have a target of, say, getting to the post box, which is about a 3-minute walk away from my house. So then, of course, I could never get to that post box because I was never following the exact pacing that I should have been. So I was always messing up. So it was all, in fact, it was funny because when I did actually start to recover and I had this sort of, realization of what was going on, I just went out for a walk and I didn't have a target and I didn't have a restriction, and I walked straight past that post box.
Wow, that's amazing when you're not limiting yourself. And I'm so glad you brought this up, because as you've said before, and I've said, pacing does work for some people, but for a lot of people, and myself included, it made me so scared and think that I was so fragile and limited. And in this mind-body approach, we do graded exposure. We do sort of slowly work back up to things, but it's from a different framework. So, and I assume you tried all the allopathic remedies and whatever doctors said might help you manage it, and that didn't help either.
Yeah, and just quickly with the pacing thing, I think it works because I had a friend that was really, really helpful for her recovery. I think it really, from my point of view, it works if it helps you feel safe. For me, it didn't help me feel safe. It made me feel in more danger. It made me feel like activity was dangerous, that, I had to be so restricted I couldn't recover, which really, when I now think of knowing the cause of what caused my illness, it doesn't make sense to try and get better that way. But yeah, so I was very much victim to the internet and finding this thing, or this person said this recovered. I think to start with, I found it very overwhelming, because there would be so many different things that I would hear that helped someone recover. So I'd think, this is it. And I tried really like extreme diets. I tried this antihistamine diet. I don't know if you ever did that.
Yeah,
but there's so
I did
many
all the diets. You name the diet, I did it.
And there's so many things, like it's not even just like don't eat gluten. It's like you can't eat an avocado, but you can eat a pineapple. You can, and it's just like me and my husband wrote it all on the blackboard, and we were like, right, okay, is this oh, but you can't cook, you can't fry something, but you can.
I know the different diets start contradicting each other, and you're like, I can eat kale. That is all I can eat. Yeah, it's not very nourishing.
I know we'll get into it, but I definitely, stress massively contributed to me becoming unwell. So to like, I mean, it what isn't ridiculous, because of course it's not ridiculous. This could have been something, if you didn't know the cause, that could cure you, but I don't think a really stressful diet and a lot of pressure was ever going to help my stress levels and make my body feel like it was safe. So I did all of that. I did the supplements. I probably did all sorts of things. I tried like, more holistic things like massage and acupuncture, but they just threw my system into a crash.
You bring up just a really, really good point, Jenny, about the safety that's so pivotal to this work. Is whatever makes your brain and nervous system feel safe is going to help. And I think sometimes that's why diets help people. And granted, it's great to be on a healthy diet, but that, a poor diet doesn't cause a massive sudden onset of debilitating symptoms that make you bedbound. So I am curious, with a lot of the things you tried, which sound like what other people try: consulting, Dr. Google, the diets, the supplements, allopathic medicine, alternative medicine. What was the turning point for you?
So it wasn't, it was a process. So I think I sort of went through all of these things, and that was helpful, really, because they really didn't help. So it got to the point where this really isn't helping. And, I did get to the point where things felt really hopeless, and I would meet a road where I'd think, none of this has helped. What am I going to do? Is this my life? A doctor would tell me that. I reached a really low point one summer where everything felt very, very hopeless. But I think what I was able to do, and I'm sure like my children and my husband helped with that a lot, was I was able to not stay in that place for too long. I would think, right, no, come on, let's try again. So all of the sort of the more physical interventions weren't working. And then I started to just really sort of think and tie this together. This makes sense. Yeah, this is something that had actually, now I realise, I think it happened to me before, after I'd had my second child. So it was triggered by something else. I'd been having a hard couple of years. I mean, a very good and great couple of years. I'd had my children, I'd got, great support around me and great job. But I'd had an increase in stress and a difficulty in managing that, and anxiety. So I started to think, right, this isn't working, but that must be connected. So, and also watching recovery videos is really useful for me. And I did start listening to the recovery videos a bit, where people were starting to talk about things like trauma and brain retraining and things. So I listened to those. And so from that, I thought, right, I'm going to start seeing a psychotherapist to work through some of this trauma leading up to getting unwell and some other things. And I got really lucky. I did some research. I got a really, really great psychotherapist. So that was kind of the start. But that didn't get me better, because I hadn't really tied together how my emotions were impacting on my physical health. So I knew it was a really positive thing to be doing. And I knew I was going to be going along the right lines. But the thing was, I was talking about quite a lot of upsetting things. Just to say, I had like an amazing therapist as well, which just made such a difference, because I trusted her completely, and we had a really good rapport. But so I was talking about these difficult things, and then it would make me really unwell. So I think that was another thing when I was thinking a bit lost again, because I think this is the right thing, but it's certainly not making me feel better. And then I went to brain retraining. I found that, and I tried a brain retraining program, which is a fantastic program, and I know has helped a lot of people. So I'm not saying anything negative about it at all, but for me, it was a bit of a disappointment moment, because it wasn't quite the right thing for me. I found there was like a lot of emphasis on homework, and you need to give yourself the best chance to recover, so you must do this homework. And then if I didn't do the homework, I'd think I'm not giving myself the best chance to recover. So it was more pressure. And the brain retraining I found wasn't compassionate. So it was saying stop this sport and stop this illness for, and say stop. So, and that was kind of making me more stressed and anxious, because I was walking around going stop.
It does sound a little stressful.
Yeah. So there was these things that were leading to it, but then a major thing happened was I was watching a recovery interview with you, Rebecca, and it came at a really good time, because it was when I was feeling a bit confused about the brain retraining, that it wasn't quite right, and you explained everything that you went through and how you recovered, and it just made absolute sense to me. And you said something at the end of the interview, and it was like I just totally got it, and it was like you were speaking to me. You said I know people have probably watched your recovery video, that somebody had said to you, "You are not sick, Rebecca." And I thought, oh wow, I'm not sick. And it's like, it sounds offensive if you just say it in that context, yes. Because of course I was sick, I was very sick, but what it meant to me was this is not a physical ailment, this is not something I need an operation for, this is not something that has a physical root cause, my system was in a state of fight or flight, and it got a virus, and it perceived that as a massive threat. This is something, and I started to understand my brain had been stuck in the pattern of feeling sick, and you can explain that better than me. But yeah, so it just made sense to me, and that was just amazing. And then another thing in that interview was you explained just in a few brief minutes how to do somatic tracking. And I replayed these few minutes over and over again, just trying to, because I Googled it, I couldn't see anything about it. So I just listened to those few minutes, and I lay down on my sofa, and I did the opposite of what I'd been doing for the whole 2 years. I felt my symptoms, I felt my emotions, which actually was just incredible. It was just a really euphoric moment. I felt like just a weight had been lifted off me. That first time I did it was incredible. It was just, I was like, it was a lot of evidence to me of wow.
That is so amazing, Jenny. I just want to kind of highlight what you just said, because I also want to thank Kathy McKinley, who's the one that told me I am not sick after 13 years with ME/CFS. But she explained the science. And so for people who are new to this approach, basically, there's a lot of neuroscience now that shows what Dr. John Sarno wrote about 50 years ago, which was that the brain and nervous system can become triggered with a perceived threat, as well as with emotional stressors, just as with physical stressors, and get sort of stuck in this hypervigilant state. And our brain learns those neural pathways. And the more we focus on the symptoms with fear, the more it trains the brain to perpetuate this state. And so what I love is that you got it, but then you started working with the somatic tracking, and that gave you an experience, because we're actually accepting ourselves as we are. We're accepting the sensations instead of fighting it, which tells our brain that we're safe. But I know that it does take some practice. So then I'm curious from there how you started incorporating somatic tracking or any other techniques around your emotions and the knowledge, understanding this mind-body knowledge.
I think so. Somatic tracking was kind of twofold for me, because it was teaching me that my symptoms weren't dangerous, because I had not realised I was doing this. But if I had a symptom that was difficult, I was going, oh my gosh, this is dangerous. Let's not feel this. Let's do anything to escape it. I was doing the same thing with emotions and hadn't really realised that, like I said, the anxiety I'd had after having my children, if it came on, I would think it was a massive threat and push it away. And I'd be annoyed with myself for feeling anxious. So it was a shift, and it was the linking up with the psychotherapy. And I think that background of the psychotherapy of all those emotions I'd let out, I started to realise it's not unsafe to feel your emotions. They are messages. They're not designed to hurt us. They're designed to give us a message. And I changed my relationship with emotions and the way I processed them. That I did a lot of just sitting with how I was feeling, and it was just a different mind shift. And it's something I still continue. Like, actually this week I was anxious about something was worrying me, and I woke up in the middle of the night worried about it. And instead of thinking, oh gosh, I'm anxious, this is unpleasant, I thought, why am I anxious? What's worrying me? And I actually then realized there was something I needed to make a change. And I rang somebody and changed something that I'd worried about. And then I felt fine. Whereas before I would have been annoyed with myself for feeling anxious. But actually, this was a message. This was something I wasn't feeling quite comfortable about. I needed to change. So it was a big shift.
And yes. And that's really brilliant, because you're listening and allowing your full self to be present. And as you're describing that, Jenny, I'm thinking, I'm sure you're like that with your sons, right? That you ask how they're feeling and what's going on and treat them softly. But if you were just to say, stop, stop feeling that emotion, stop having that headache, how is that child going to react?
And that's another thing that you explained to me when we're having the coaching sessions. And you said, talk to yourself like you would your boys, like in a loving way. And so that was really helpful as well. And I still try to do that, because I think I'd been so critical of myself and so annoyed with myself. Whereas now I might say, this emotion is really hard, that's okay. And I just let it in. Just that self-compassion was really helpful.
Oh, beautiful. And, I want to say you were just like so amazing to me, because really we just met a few times, but you had done so much of the learning on your own. I know you said you read my blogs and watched videos, and then you were seeing your psychotherapist, and that's a great combination. I think the knowledge and practices and maybe some one-on-one work.
I think they all combine together, and then the final piece of the puzzle was meeting you, and it all connected. I think the psychotherapy was amazing. I had amazing psychotherapists, but I wouldn't have got better with that. I needed to do that as a preparatory work. And then that interview with you just changed everything for me, because I then went on your website. I absolutely devoured everything. I listened to every interview you did. I listened to everything you shared. I read all the Sarno books. I gave myself the information, and that was really, really important, because I know some people that have got better by doing meeting somebody on the internet or a course or something like that, and they've just been able to trust that person. I couldn't do that. I needed to know the science behind it, and it made so much sense to me. And I think I was fortunate as well. I'd had the evidence of this happening to me previously. So it made so much sense. And I knew I'd recovered previously. So that all of the wonderful stuff you shared was just, I feel like after I watched your interview and then I read all the stuff, and then I spoke to you, because speaking to you was massive as well, because I was saying to, family and friends, well, so I'm discovered that the reason I've stayed ill is because my brain is keeping me ill. And you think people are looking at you, but it's not. I mean, I think in the UK, there's a lot of great stuff going on, but it's a bit behind America. The medical model is still very, very dominant. So speaking to you was amazing, because it was real. And it was real. You were there. You were telling me about it. You'd recovered from it, and I believed you. I definitely saw you, and I believed your story, and that was so lovely how you shared your story so openly, because I believed you. And I really feel like, and I know this is not the way for everybody, but I feel like I got better like that. And that's not to say I was out running and I was out working and living a normal life. I wasn't, but I just knew I was fine. Like, we had some friends come around, which I wouldn't have done. And I had brain fog and I was struggling to concentrate on what they were saying, but I just didn't care. I was just happy. It wasn't dangerous. It was fine. There was nothing wrong with me. It was fine. And then,
Yes.
you know, like, it just happened gradually. I think I did pace, but with no target, or I just went and did something, and gradually and naturally it was a bit more gradual. So I just got out there and lived, and I gave myself that evidence by doing it. Do you want me to tell you about when I went on holiday? Because I think that's quite a nice example of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to say, you sort of, when you shift your emotional state, it tells your brain and nervous system you're safe. And so in a way, it's really, really simple. Not everyone can get there as quickly. So we have different practices and tools that we offer to help people get in that state. But that's what your brain and nervous system is basing your state of safety on. It's basically your emotional experience. Mm-hmm. So then you kind of built up a little bit to traveling again.
So we had this holiday booked. There would have been no way I would have booked it, but it had been delayed because of COVID, and it came to the point we had to go on it. And it was just the time, fortunately, that I'd been making these breakthroughs. I'd spoken to you. So we thought, let's go. But I was still, you know, very restricted in what I was doing. Again, just not because I was just sort of building naturally, and I wasn't, you know, at a normal functioning at that point. So we went for the airport, and I had wheelchair assistance. And then on holiday, I mean, it was just like a perfect thing, really, because it was sunny, it was lovely, we were having nice meals, the boys were having a nice time. And I just kept on doing these things, and they were okay, just naturally. And actually, on the way back, we had a night flight, and I walked through the whole airport, no wheelchair, fine.
Wow, I love it, because you knew it was fine. And I also want to say, for people listening who think, oh, but I do those things and I get symptoms. I'm sure this happened to you, Jenny. And when I started challenging my brain, especially after 13 years of CFS, I got a lot of symptoms, but it's not letting that control you, right? And it's continually retraining that primitive part of your brain that you are safe and you're happy and you can walk through the airport and go on vacation.
Yeah. And I did a lot of the brain retraining, but in a totally different way, in a totally compassionate way. If I would be starting to feel scared about something, or thinking, oh, I can't do this, I'd just say, oh gosh, Jenny, that's really hard, isn't it? You're finding that hard. That's a bit scary. I would catch it like that, rather than saying, stop that thought, you know. And that's
exactly that mindful self-compassion is so important for this work, right? Because it's softer, and it also brings in like another way to approach the pushing, the pressure, the perfectionism, and all the things that really rev up our nervous system.
I just remembered, actually, I used to just say to myself, you're safe, you are not sick. That's what I said, what you taught me, you are not sick. And I would say that, and that would make me feel a lot better. But, you know, I was fine, and I was out living life again. And I think that was a big key thing for me, just to get out. I listened to John Sarno's got those 12 daily reminders, and there's an audio on YouTube, and I listen to them a lot. And it just said, get out and live your life. It's not dangerous. And that was, like I said, it happened to me before, and I hadn't realised it was a mind-body illness then, but I could work out that it was. And I think I heard you interview another person that had similarly had another mind-body illness before. So I think maybe that does accelerate your recovery a little bit, because you've already got that evidence. This has happened before, and I felt better.
Beautiful. Oh my goodness. You're just incredible how you've applied this work. And I think too, you found it earlier on, where those of us that have had things for years, it sometimes is a leap of faith to really understand a new paradigm in thinking about these symptoms. Okay, so what else would you like to share about what was helpful in your recovery? You've touched on self-compassion and joy. But do you want to talk a little more about either of those things, or anything else that really, because I know there were a number of months you still felt you were recovering.
Oh yeah, I was. I mean, when I say I was better like that, I was only better in my mind like that. I was
Yeah.
well, I knew there was no threat. I could get back to my life, but it did certainly take some time to be back. And still now, I'm just about to go back to work. That's a new thing to do. There's still new things to do, but I'm living my life unrestricted now. So, and then, like I said, I didn't put like restrictions on myself, but naturally I would, gravitate to things that were a bit more gentle to start with. I just trusted myself. So yeah, I mean, it, like I said to you before, Rebecca, it wasn't complicated for me. And I wouldn't want anybody to ever watch a video with me and think of it like a prescription, because I think it's really individual. The thing for me was the knowledge and the knowing, the understanding this is a neural pathway issue that needs retraining. This is the result of having a traumatic time after I had my children, and being in a state of stress and fight or flight, and then getting the virus, what we think is COVID, and my body perceived it as a massive attack, and then never got out of that fight or flight, that fight or flight situation that it felt in. And just knowing that was enough for me. And I know, and for a lot of people, I know that there needs to be more, but it wasn't really complicated for me. It was just the knowing and the feeling safe. And I think whichever kind of approach you do, I just think it's really important. This is a really important thing to remember for me, is it shouldn't really, I don't think it should be work. You're healing from, your body's been through a hard time. You need to heal. You need love, you need comfort, you need to give yourself what you need. If you want that nice cozy meal and a blanket, or you want to watch a lovely soppy film, all of those things. I think if you had cancer, you wouldn't be recovering by trying to put a lot of pressure on you and follow you would be giving your body time to heal and trying to get back on your feet in a nice way. And I think however you choose to do that, I think it's just really important to bring your body to safety. So the knowledge for me, the education, and then the showing my brain through somatic tracking and getting out and living was enough for me, really.
Yeah, well, that's a lot. And I'm also hearing that you did bring in a lot of awareness to your emotions and learning to be your authentic self, right? So instead of being a people pleaser, which is one of those personality traits Sarno described, that you also are learning to just honor your truth.
That was another, thank you for mentioning that, actually, because that is another good point. Because I definitely, I think like a lot of people do when you hear of the personality traits, they were really me. I definitely was a people pleaser. I was in a situation, I'd had a tough couple of years. Having children was wonderful for me, but I'd struggled after having children. I'd had a tough couple of years. But my personality traits were obviously not doing me too much favours at that point, because I decided it was a really good point in my life to be trying to work up the career ladder and go for higher up positions, which is obviously wasn't the right time to be doing
when
that.
You had two young babies.
I had two young children, and I'd had a hard time, after I had them. It wasn't the time to be climbing the career ladder, but those personality traits that maybe I wasn't aware enough of, so there was a build-up for those, they definitely had an impact. So now, and I'm not a perfect person, I don't get it all right, but I try to be aware of those personality traits, and I'm trying to live a more authentic life. Like, I went out and got my nose pierced and a tattoo because that's what I wanted to do, and before I would have been worried about what other people thought. And I'm going into a career, I like my job, I really enjoyed my job, but I really wanted to go into something now that is really right for me and I'm really passionate about. So I'm going to work in special needs education, which I'm really passionate about because my youngest son's autistic. So I'm really following what's right for me. and really trying to be aware of those sort of people pleaser tendencies. And it can still happen, but I'm aware of them more. I think Dr. Sarno said that, actually. It's not like you need to change your personality, because that's not going to happen, but you need to be a bit aware.
Yes, exactly. It's being aware of them. And I think of it as becoming more of who we are rather than the personality traits or these coping mechanisms we developed early on in our life, often to be accepted. And Jenny, one last thing I want to ask you about is you even came back to be an assistant in my Be Your Own Medicine course. And of course, I wasn't offering that course when you were really ill.
I would have done it like that.
Right? Because it has all the meditations and all the knowledge and all the practices. And you were so brilliant in our community. And I'm just sort of curious what you would say about the course in terms of what you learned, but also what it was like to support other people.
It was incredible. And I think there's a real urge, isn't there, to want to pass the torch on. I think, as I've heard you say before, I would love to, help have a little part in helping somebody, even if it's watching this video and somebody thinks, wow, they relate to that and think I can get better. So it was really, really, it was amazing, really. It was like coming full circle, because I'd met you when I was unwell, and then here I was sort of trying to help others. It's an amazing community, which is an incredible thing to have when you're poorly, is if you start to understand the concepts of the mind-body approach and TMS, to have that community around you that are understanding too, and you can support each other. That I don't think there's anywhere else that you can get that. It's incredible. So I just, that was amazing. And people sharing the progress they were making and encouraging each other. It was an incredible space to have as well, because there's so many, like I said to you before, Rebecca, people recover in different ways, and you provide just such an array of information on that course. So some people that really benefit from the journaling ideas or the different types of meditation, there's so much information. And the other thing that was like massive in my recovery was the education and understanding of the mind-body approach and being able to relate it to what happened to me. That was incremental in my recovery. And in the Be Your Own Medicine course, there's all of that you would need. And it's put together in a format that is graduated in terms of being able to build that understanding. And then also having you, Rebecca, which is incredible, because you're such an incredible motivating factor, because of your wonderful story and your warmth and your honesty in sharing that and supporting each of the participants, which is incredible. And I know a lot of people said on the Be Your Own Medicine course that they hadn't had support like in any other course like this, and I think that's very unique.
Yeah, and here you are sharing your story now, and you were helping others in the course. And I think we all saw in that community in Be Your Own Medicine that there's so much power in finding others who have a shared experience and now are lifting ourselves out of this in a new way. And there's really a collective healing that happens. So, Jenny, is there anything else that you want to add?
Just to anybody who's listening, I was that person that felt there was no hope, and it's an awful place to be. And I know you can listen to certain things and they can feel a million miles away, but this is not a life sentence. This illness is not a life sentence. And I've heard people write certain things on forums saying, oh, I'm 60 years old, so I can't get better, or this and that. Anybody can get better. It's really, really hard to get, it's really hard to make those connections with what's going on. But once you do, you can get your life back. And I absolutely have. I never really thought, and it's better as well. I'm not a perfect person. I'm sure I'll have mind-body symptoms at some point again, because that's everybody does. Everybody gets a migraine or something like that. and I won't get it perfect all the time, but I'm living my life unrestricted, and it is better because I've learned so much more. I wouldn't say I have anxiety at all anymore, because I feel anxiety sometimes, but that's just an emotion, that's a message. It's nothing dangerous, it's just something that needs to be processed, and that's a whole different way of living, which is incredible. So, you know, just don't give up hope. You'll find your way. And and on the Be Your Own Medicine course, it was lovely seeing people make progress, but they were finding different things. You know, somebody really liked the journaling, somebody particularly liked this meditation. We all take our own path, so it's not a prescription. You'll find your own path, but learning the mind-body connection. You know, watch your interviews, read some of the John Sarno books or Dr. Schubner, and you can get better. Absolutely.
Oh, Jenny, I'm so happy speaking with you and seeing your recovery. And I'm just thanking you and so grateful to you for sharing that.
And I'm so grateful to you, Rebecca. Thank you so much, because I wouldn't be here today without you. And the kindness and love that you're sharing through this work is just incredible. You're saving lives. You really are.
Oh my goodness, it's so humbling. It makes the whole healing journey worth it. So thank you so much, Jenny. I really appreciate it. And Jenny and I want you to know that healing is possible, even when it feels impossible. A lot of it is about learning this new paradigm, realizing you can recover, and finding ways to calm down your nervous system, be compassionate to yourself, and retrain your brain. So if you want to try a somatic meditation, such as the one Jenny mentioned, you can go on my website and sign up for free at RebeccaTolin.com. And if you're really ready for a radical recovery, I teach the steps in my Be Your Own Medicine course. You can check that out on my website as well. For more videos, you can subscribe to my channel and leave me a comment. Thanks so much for watching, everyone.